Billionaire's baby rips cleaner's wig off. The shocking truth that followed at 3 a.m. The clock struck 3, echoing through the empty halls of the grand mansion that belonged to billionaire tycoon, Jonathan Wolfe. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. Crooked shadows danced on the walls like restless spirits, whispering secrets known only to the night. But it was inside the opulent playroom that chaos erupted. Suddenly, little Max, the Billionaire'S toddler, let out a shrill giggle. It was innocent, sweet, until it wasn't. He lunged forward like a tornado, fingers reaching out toward the janitor, Ms. Grace, who was quietly cleaning up the glitter from Max's earlier escapades. In a shocking blur, the toddler yanked at her brightly colored wig, sending it flying across the room. Gasps filled the air, voices trembling in disbelief as onlookers stumbled into the playroom. Ms. Grace stood frozen, eyes wide, a wave of humiliation crashing over her as her real hair, frazzled and thin, hung limply from her scalp. It wasn't just playful fun, it was a scene that felt ripped from a twisted reality show. Gasps turned into murmurs, each tensing the atmosphere further. Who would dare let such a thing happen? Jonathan, ever the protector, rushed in with a deer-in-the-headlights expression, yet his feigned calm only added fuel to the fire burning in the room. "Did you see that?" someone croaked, wide-eyed. A woman in a designer dress clutched her pearls as if they could shield her from the chaos erupting around her. "That kid is out of control." But why was a billionaire's child digging into a worker's dignity in the first place? The ancient grandfather clock ticked ominously, each tick amplifying the unthinkable. This was no ordinary meltdown. What dark history lingered in the Wolfe mansion? Why was the usually carefully maintained image of the million-dollar empire unraveling so fast? Max's laughter echoed through the playroom, cold and devilish, seeping into the cracks where fear began to settle. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads-up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But just as Max raised his tiny hands, the lights flickered ominously, casting elongated shadows across the plush carpet. The room fell silent. The air grew dense, as if an invisible force had settled in. A few brave souls glanced at their phones, searching for answers, but it was the sudden cackle of laughter that broke the heaviness. Who else was present in the mansion at this hour? This wasn't just prankish fun, it was a warning. Dark thoughts swirled like smoke in the minds of those surrounding the strangely exhilarated child. Was this a night that would change everything? What secrets lay buried within those walls, waiting for the dead of night to drag them into the light? As curiosity gnawed at their insides, questions hung in the air. What would happen next? And who was truly pulling the strings in this bizarre game? The silence shattered as the laughter erupted again, a sound that felt both innocent and malevolent. As everyone turned, the air thickened with tension. White-knuckled grips on phones and champagne flutes were the only signs of the fear creeping in. Max, with his wide eyes, became a figure of pure chaotic energy, as if he sensed the room's deepening dread. Someone needs to take him out of here. A voice pierced the anxious chatter, cutting through the tension. It came from a man in a tailored suit, who stepped forward, concern shadowing his face. But before he could make a move toward the child, the lights blinked back on, casting everything in a harsh white glow. Jonathan Wolfe's face twisted into confusion as he scanned the room, a sense of urgency beginning to settle over him. He felt acutely aware of the onlookers, some whispering, others wide-eyed in terror as they observed the spectacle unfolding before them. He had built this empire on control, on the unyielding balance of power, and now it felt like it was slipping through his fingers. "Max, darling, come here." Jonathan called, his voice a steady anchor against the tempest brewing. But the toddler was lost in fascination, entirely immersed in this newfound thrill of chaos. As the crowd bristled, Miss Grace regained her composure. She fought against the humiliation that threatened to drown her. The wig lay discarded, like a fallen crown. She straightened her spine, looking into the sea of eyes watching her every move. What was it, she thought, that made her feel so small? Just a worker in someone else's grand fantasy. In the midst of her thoughts, shadows flickered in her peripheral vision. She turned sharply, the laughter had shifted to hushed whispers. The whispers began forming into a singular voice, unmistakably close to the edges of the playroom. Isn't it funny how the mighty can fall? The voice teased, full of a mockery that sent chills up her spine. The room held its breath. Max's laughter echoed again, sharper now, mixing with the newcomer's sinister tone. Everyone turned as a tall figure stepped into the light. His face was obscured, but his posture screamed confidence, as if he thrived in discomfort. He chuckled, eyes dark and shrouded in mystery. Who is this? Jonathan frowned, confusion morphing into anger. What is going on here? I'm just here to remind you, Johnny boy, that power is but an illusion. The stranger's voice slithered through the air, wrapping around everyone like a noose. Just as quickly as he appeared, the figure leaned toward Miss Grace, a gleam of amusement in his eyes. Isn't it fascinating how the past always claws its way back? A gasp escaped her lips. The air was heavy, every heart raced against the uncertainty. Jonathan stepped forward, fists clenched at his sides. Get out! You're not welcome here. His outburst was raw with protective fury, but before anything could escalate, Max burst out laughing again, his laughter echoing and pulsating through the room like a heartbeat. The thug grinned, as if he found Max's mirth the most amusing thing. Oh, but it's only just begun. The real show hasn't even started. Those words hung in the air, electrifying everyone. What did he mean? What dark show awaited them in the labyrinth of secrets buried within those walls? As the lights flickered once more, casting the room into a rhythm of light and darkness, each flicker felt like a countdown, as if the storm was about to break. What awaited them in that fateful darkness? Little did anyone know, the answers they sought were as twisted as the fate of the Wolf legacy itself. A sudden, blaring noise cut through the tension, the fire alarm shrieking like a banshee, forcing everyone to jump back in unison. Panic rippled through the crowd, voices rising in alarm. Guests stumbled over each other, their panic turning the once elegant gathering into chaos in seconds. Jonathan's heart raced, terror clawing at him. Max! He shouted over the cacophony, desperately trying to locate his son amidst the throng. The room transformed into a living nightmare. The stranger was no longer in sight. Shadows seemed to swell and shift in the corner of Jonathan's vision. He scanned the crowd, but Max was nowhere in sight. The laughter that had been so innocently chilling now had a menacing quality against the backdrop of alarm bells. Where did he go? Jonathan shouted, his voice strained, fear cracking it. He grabbed Miss Grace by the arm, pulling her closer. Did you see where he went? She stammered, her eyes wide. He was right there. I thought he was with you. Beneath the bleating of the alarm, a thin, frightening burst of laughter emerged, drifting through the air like a whisper. It was familiar, unbothered by the panic around it. Jonathan's heart sunk. It was Max. The absurdity of hearing his toddler's laughter amidst the chaos made a knot form in Jonathan's stomach. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to find his son. He shoved through the crowd, his suit jacket brushing against panic-stricken faces. The throng hissed, a sea of distress swirling around him. Clarity slipped through his fingers, lost in the chaos. Max! Where are you? He called, voice fraying at the edges. Through the chaos, he reached an open doorway, leading into a darkened hallway. The blaring alarm faded slightly, but the unmistakable sound of giggling floated from somewhere deep within. Chills skittered down Jonathan's spine. Was Max playing? This was not the time for games. He pushed forward into the hallway, shadows morphing into eerie figures on the walls. Heart thudding, he took a breath and stepped into the dim light. Max! He shouted again, desperation weaving through his voice. He glanced around, every creak in the house sounding too loud. Fear clenched his stomach as he moved deeper into the abyss, where only darkness promised answers but also uncertainty. Then, he heard an unmistakable thud, followed by wild laughter echoing from the end of the elongated corridor. He raced forward, feet hammering against polished wood. The sound of playful footsteps rang in the hall, and he turned a corner. Jonathan froze. The scene that met his eyes sent ice running through his veins. Max stood with arms outstretched, as if welcoming a long-lost friend, while the stranger leaned casually against the wall, face still hidden in shadow. The storm in Jonathan's chest erupted. "Get away from him!" he roared, a primal fury unleashed within him. "Oh, come now," the stranger crooned, amusement dripping from his voice. "Isn't he just the cutest little thing? Look how he trusts me." A smile split his face, revealing nothing good. Max giggled, oblivious to the growing danger as he took a step closer to the figure. Jonathan's world narrowed to that one moment, everything blurring into nothing but the threat before him. The air felt thick as time slowed. Would he reach his son in time? Was it too late? Panic gripped him, but with it, a powerful anger surged. "Don't you dare touch him!" he screamed, charging forward, ready to confront the embodiment of his fears. Before he could reach them, the lights flickered once more, plunging the corridor into an even darker pit. A deep rumble echoed through the hall, the building groaning as if aware of the storm brewing. Jonathan fought against the dread creeping into his heart. "Don't you love a surprise?" The stranger's voice taunted from the shadows, chillier than the darkness itself. As Jonathan flared against the darkness, his resolve hardening, the fire alarm abruptly silenced. An unnatural calm replaced the chaos. What now lay waiting in the quiet? In that unsettling silence, a door creaked open behind them, revealing something lurking in the gloom. What awaited them on the other side could change everything. The silence wrapped around Jonathan like a thick fog, pressing down on him. It was unnerving, a stark contrast to the previous chaos. The shadows lengthened, the air turned electric, and a deep sense of foreboding churned in his gut. He held on to that moment between heartbeats, a desperate state of readiness, as if any second could light the wick to a powder keg. Max's laughter echoed, sweet yet sickeningly innocent amidst the dread. The stranger simply watched, a gleam of amusement in his hidden eyes, his face half cast in shadows. Jonathan's instincts kicked into overdrive. He lunged forward, breathless with rage and fear. "Max! Come here, buddy!" He stretched out his arms, willing his son to return to safety, but before the boy could respond, the creaking door swung wider, revealing a dimly lit room beyond. Dark shapes shifted inside, shifting the balance of air like a storm front. Jonathan hesitated, glancing back at the stranger, whose grin widened, malice playing at the edges. "Careful, Jonathan," the stranger warned, his voice a tantalizing whisper that crawled under Jonathan's skin. "The attic holds many secrets." Jonathan's heart thudded painfully in his chest. He couldn't let his fear paralyze him, he had to act. "Max!" he yelled, his voice breaking through the haze of insecurity, desperate for the tiniest sign of his son's safety. "Get away from him!" Max turned, his innocent face alight with a mix of curiosity and laughter, oblivious to the looming danger. The stranger tilted his head, taking a step closer, bending down as if to draw Max into a tainted game. Jonathan surged forward, adrenaline igniting his every move, time stretched as he rushed down the hall. Each step felt monumental, the distance between him and his son like an eternity. But just as his hand could grasp Max's shoulder, the lights blinking erratically again, a jagged brightness flashing before plunging them back into darkness. In that instant, everything shifted, and Jonathan found himself needing more than just speed, he needed strategy. The darkness wasn't just a cloak, it was a weapon. The stranger's laughter rang out again, a sound that twisted with every shadow in the room. From behind the creature, something emerged, a faint glow, growing brighter, illuminating a grotesque assortment of shapes. It turned out to be a strange collection of children's toys, tarnished and broken, piled high beside the wall, creating an unsettling juxtaposition of childhood against a backdrop of terror. The aura of dread escalated. "You see, Jonathan," the man teased, his voice smooth and calming, like honey laced with poison, "he isn't just my guest. He is special. They all are." Jonathan's stomach dropped. What did that mean? He could feel the sharp sting of sweat on his brow. Max's laughter had shifted tone, as if the boy now mirrored the stranger's happiness. "Run, Max!" Jonathan shouted, his throat raw. But his son simply giggled, entranced by the bright glow of the nearby toys. Desperation clawed at Jonathan as he rushed forward, ready to grasp Max and tear him away from the darkness. But as he neared, something impossible caught his attention, a figure materializing in the shadows behind the stranger, the contours shifting like smoke. This newcomer seemed familiar and utterly terrifying. Jonathan's heart raced even faster now. Who were they? What did they want? Before he could process anything further, that strange figure leaned forward, their voice cutting through the air. "Hello, Jonathan. We've been waiting for you." Chills crawled down Jonathan's spine, setting his pulse racing. Each moment stretched to breaking point, and fear morphed into a roiling sense of dread. Who were they waiting for? Max clapped his hands, laughter ricocheting off the walls, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. But for Jonathan, it was too late. The trap was set, and the real game was about to begin. What would happen when the pieces fell into place? The shadows shivered as Jonathan stood frozen, his gaze locked on the unseen figure behind the stranger. He felt a heavy lump in his throat, choking his resolve. With each fleeting second, the laughter of his son grew louder, mingling with the sinister joy of the stranger. This was no playtime, it was a dark festival where innocence was the prey. "Stop it, Max." Jonathan's voice rang out, sharper than glass, each syllable dripping with an urgency that felt both desperate and futile. But the boy, enraptured by the flickering glow of broken toys, seemed entranced, as if the very light had cast a spell over him. "Look at all the pretty things," Max exclaimed, pointing towards a weathered stuffed bear. Its button I was missing, replaced with a dark hole that seemed to stare back at Jonathan, mocking him. The stranger chuckled softly, and it sent a cold shiver down Jonathan's spine. He has only just begun to realize how special he truly is. "Isn't that right, Max?" Jonathan's fists clenched. What did he mean by special? The atmosphere had shifted drastically, the air thick with malice, wrapping around him like barbed wire. "Why are you doing this?" Jonathan shouted, eyes darting from the stranger to the figure looming behind him. Their face was hidden in shadow, but he could sense the malice radiating from them, threatening to bloom like a dark flower. "Why?" The stranger purred, barely containing a laugh. "Because you've all been chosen." Such joy. Such a privilege, really. Before Jonathan could respond, the figure behind the stranger stepped forward, the light illuminating just enough for him to see a flash of a familiar face, a face he wished he could forget. It was Rachel. But her expression was twisted, unnaturally excited. It wasn't the warmth he remembered, this was something else, something terrifying. "Rachel? Is that really you?" Jonathan staggered back, the world spinning. "What has happened to you?" The fake smile twisted wider as she urged, "You need to see what we are creating here, Jonathan. Max is perfect for the project. Just look at him." "No." Jonathan shouted through gasps, desperation clawing at every part of him. He had to get Max, he had to break this spell before it consumed his son. As he lunged forward, the air thickened with an almost tangible dread. The ground beneath him seemed to shift, like walking over quicksand, and the shadows clawed at his feet, holding him back. "Jonathan." Rachel chimed, a sing-song voice dripping with honeyed malice, "You need to understand. We need your consent, a father's blessing to complete it all. Isn't that what any parent would do for their child?" Jonathan's heart raced as he struggled against the holds of the shadows. He fought to reach Max, breaking free from the weight on his shoulders, but every step felt heavier, like running through thickening mud. "Run, Max!" he shouted, but the boy merely giggled, spinning around as if admiring an unseen audience. Was he even aware of the danger enveloping him? Then, the laughter stopped. In the sudden silence, the stranger turned to face Jonathan fully, a fateful smirk curling his lips. "Once Max accepts his true purpose, he will never leave, none of them will. And all it takes is for you to say yes." The dagger of horror twisted deeper in Jonathan's gut. How could anyone do this? How could she be part of this madness? The walls seemed to close in around him, the very air vibrating with impending chaos. Just as he thrust one more time towards his son, the lights flickered once more, plunging them into darkness again. A voice echoed in the void, sending chills down his spine. "You can't escape this, Jonathan. We're just getting started. Don't you want to see how it ends?" Jonathan felt panicked tears prick his eyes. The walls of the attic pulsed like a living thing, each beat threatening to swallow him whole. He could feel the darkness closing in, the laughter still chiming in the void. Would he be able to reach Max before it was too late, or was that laughter the sound of something far more sinister on the horizon? And then, in that muted blackness, he heard a whisper, a promise wrapped in shadows. "You have until midnight, Jonathan, choose wisely." His heart tightened. Time was slipping away. What was the price for a father's love? And would he be able to pay the toll before it all fell apart? Would the darkness claim them both? Jonathan's breath quickened, the darkness swirling around him like a living creature, tightening its hold. He screamed his son's name, a raw sound that clawed its way up from the depths of his throat. "Max! Get away from her!" But his voice came out as a whisper, caught in the oppressive stillness. Time was a cruel trickster, leaving him helpless against the shadows that wrapped around his legs, pulling him down, down, down. Rachel's voice echoed in his mind. "You need to consent, Jonathan, for him." The twisted affection in her tone chilled him. It was as if she had become a puppet dancing to someone else's music. She had always been the light in his life, but now it felt like that light was infected by something malevolent. "Max!" he repeated, and this time his cry broke through the darkness, cutting through the silence like a knife. A small vision flickered before him, his son, eyes wide and innocent, enchanted by the wreckage of toys surrounding him. Jonathan lunged again, every ounce of his being urging him to break free from the suffocating grip of doom. There was something unnatural about the way the shadows twisted and contorted, as if they were drawn to Max, feeding off his childlike joy. Jonathan strained, muscles burning, desperate to reach him. Suddenly, a cacophony erupted from the depths of the shadows, laughter mingling with squeals of delight. The ephemeral light seemed to pulse, illuminating the figure of the stranger, who now stood tall, arms spread wide as if drawing the very darkness into him. "Isn't it beautiful, Jonathan?" he crooned. "A playground unlike any other. Max will shine among them." The charade felt like barbed wire across Jonathan's soul, forcing him to see the horror unfolding before him. With a final surge of will, Jonathan screamed, "You can't have him. You don't get to decide for us." And in that instant, everything changed. The ground trembled beneath him, shadows recoiling as they tangled and retreated. In the moment of uncertainty, Max laughed. A giggle that rang bright and pure, and for a fleeting second, hope flared in Jonathan's chest. But their laughter was not innocent, it was hollow and tainted. As if mocking the very essence of joy. Jonathan seized the moment, surging forward, and this time, he felt the weight of the shadows lighten. He reached for Max, their fingers almost touching, yet a terrifying force pushed him back as if refuting his claim. "No!" Jonathan roared, a primal scream rattling in his chest. A sickening darkness spiraled down over Max, the child's laughter morphing into a symphony of torment. It was then that Jonathan saw it, a glimmer in the depths of the void, a wicked smile filled with delight. The stranger and Rachel were sharing a knowing glance, a light of madness igniting in both. "Time is running out," Rachel's voice floated back to him, distant and echoing. "You must decide. Midnight approaches." The clock began to tick in his mind, each second a pounding reminder of his despair. He felt a flicker of fear ignite into something sharper, something that cut through the fog. He wasn't just fighting for Max, he was fighting for their very souls. With a sudden twist in his gut, the horror of the situation crystallized. He needed a plan, a way to sever the ties this dark puppet master held over Rachel. "What do I do?" he whispered to himself, the weight of the world crashing over him, and just like that, the flickering lights shot back on, revealing the grotesque tableau that sprawled before him. Max, still laughing, now stood at the heart of a ring of twisted toys, a spectral carnival trapped in a ballroom of shadows. Yet, in that circle, Jonathan saw something else. The eyes of the other children, wide and terrified, caught his gaze. They too were trapped, bound to whatever sick game played out in this grotesque realm. Rachel's sing-song voice slid through the air. "Will you give yourself to us? Just say yes, and it can all be yours." The shadows whispered promises of power, of unimaginable things that could be theirs if only he'd acquiesce. But in his heart, Jonathan knew. There was only one choice that could bring his son back. Would he be strong enough to resist the sweet seduction of darkness? Could he unravel the nightmare before the clock struck midnight? As the shadows swirled, gathering strength, he felt the words he needed to say on the tip of his tongue. But before they could escape, a chilling laugh echoed. "Midnight is almost here, Jonathan, make your choice." What would he sacrifice to save his child's soul? Would the darkness hunger for more? His heart raced, a relentless drum echoing the countdown ticking in his mind. Midnight was nearly upon them. Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, dancing and taunting, their forms becoming almost theatrical in their delight. Each flicker of light revealed more of the sinister carnival, a spectacle that held a nightmare's beauty but smelled of charred hope. "Jonathan." Max's voice, sweet as sugar yet steeped in innocent madness, echoed around him. "Look. I'm playing." He pointed to the warped, swirling colors of the carnival, where children wove between toys that grinned with hollow eyes. The sight stabbed Jonathan's heart. Max's laughter, once joyful, now felt like shards of glass digging into his soul. He pushed against the shadows, refusing to let them drag him down any further. "I'm coming for you, Max," he shouted, determination coiling through him like a spring ready to snap, but each word felt an eternity away. The stranger, that devilish figure, laughed, his voice curling into the darkness like smoke. "You think you can save him? The shadows are stronger than you know. You're merely a moth drawn to the flame." With every step forward, Jonathan felt the ground shift beneath him. He sensed an icy grip upon his ankles, thick as fog, a breath that rattled like dead leaves in an autumn wind. The toys around Max began to whisper, soft coos that sank into Jonathan's skin, wrapping round his heart. "Say yes, Father," the toys crooned together, voices rising in dreadful harmony. "Join us. Become like them." Jiminy Cricket, catatonic and skeletal, flicked a mechanized grin, its tiny, sunken eyes gleaming with unspeakable hunger. They wanted him, wanted his pain, his essence. But Max was at stake. The lights flickered, throwing distortions across the scene, as if reality could barely contain itself. He had to act. He glanced at the children held captive in the dance of shadows. Their eyes screamed for liberation, mirroring the desperation in his chest. "No!" Jonathan roared, firming his stance. "You want to take him. I want to let you." A deep rumble echoed from the stranger, who stepped closer, his face a grotesque map of shadows. "You have no idea what it is you are resisting, Jonathan. This is more than mere desire. This is power. Accept it, and you can turn this darkness into light." As Jonathan wrestled with his resolve, a faint glimmer of light caught his eye and escape. An old lantern, flickering weakly against the night, dim but not extinguished. Could hope still shine? He could feel it calling him, beckoning him like a distant memory. It flickered with something vital, something that could cut through the night's corrosion. If I go for the light, maybe I can free Max, maybe it can shatter their hold. But the shadows roared, swarming over him thicker than ever, swirling in agitation. Foolish man. They hissed. The light won't save you, it will consume you. Frantic, Jonathan fought against the encroaching storm, determination solidifying like iron in his veins. He focused on Max, both their eyes locked for that brief moment of clarity. In his son's gaze, the flicker of courage ignited, as if Max believed in Jonathan, and that belief felt like armor against the swarming dread. Max, listen to me. I need you to be brave, he shouted above the chaos, a fierce conviction lighting the darkness. Together, we can break free. As if in answer, the carnival wavered. A sharp crack sounded in the void, and the ground throbbed beneath them. The shadows tightened their grip, but a pathway opened just a sliver away to that lantern. Jonathan lunged forward, feeling the pull. Every inch was a battle, tearing through the darkness, hands reaching for the light. Don't let go. He urged. Stay with me, Max. I'm almost there. Max's laughter pierced the chaos, ringing out like a bell, yet mixed with fear. Dad! Hurry! As the darkness howled and lashed out, Jonathan felt a tremor in the air, a force building around him. Would the light be their salvation, or would it consume him as the shadows had warned? The question lingered in the air like a thunderstorm, thick with impending dread. Would they emerge from this nightmare, or would darkness claim them both before midnight fell? The clock struck, resonating through the shadows, and then all became chillingly still. Jonathan felt the silence wrap around him like a suffocating shroud, heavy and ominous. It bore down on his heart, amplifying the soft, rhythmic thud of his pulse against the encroaching quiet. All around, the shadows held their breath, waiting as if anticipating a sinister revelation. The fractured edges of the carnival flickered. The grotesque laughter of the stranger dimmed, replaced by a palpable tension that cut through the air sharper than a blade. In that moment, Jonathan knew that he had a choice. He focused on the lantern, its faded warmth beckoning like a heartbeat amidst the chaos, pulsing with life in stark contrast to the despair surrounding him. Just a little closer, he thought, gritting his teeth and pushing back against the engulfing darkness that he charged toward the light, throwing his shoulder against the weight of the shadows clawing at his back. Every step felt heavier than the last, a thick mire of despair threatening to pull him down. The whispers of the toys grew louder, drowning out Max's laughter, their insatiable voices curling around him like ivy. Join us. You'll never escape. Embrace the shadows. No. Jonathan shouted defiantly, planting his feet firm against the ground, feeling that flicker of hope rise within him as it battled the despair. I refuse to give in. I'm coming for you, Max. As he propelled himself forward, the light grew brighter, illuminating the path around him. But the moment he looked away from Max, the boy was obscured by a surge of shadow, as if the darkness was intent on devouring that small spark of life. Max! He cried out, panic crashing in like a tsunami. He turned, desperation flooding his veins, searching frantically for his son. The carnival twisted grotesquely, distorting the reality around him, a nightmarish funhouse of dread. Then he saw it, a shadow lunging toward the lantern, seeking to extinguish its light, dark tendrils stretching and threatening like serpents ready to strike. No, 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 Jonathan breathed, his voice almost lost amidst the cacophony. In an instant, he felt that the icy grip of fear surged through him, a sudden realization piercing his heart. If that lantern snuffed out, there would be no chance left. Everything would slip away into total darkness. Jonathan gritted his teeth, channeling every ounce of strength left within him. He charged forward, grounded by the unwavering belief in his son, his lifeline. As he leapt toward the lantern, the shadows coiled tighter around him, whispering sweet lies, it's hopeless. You can never save him. Jonathan's heart ached at the thought, but a spark ignited within him, a defiant fire. You're wrong. I want to be consumed. With a furious cry, he pushed through the shadows, feeling fear's burning tendrils scrape at his skin, but he wouldn't yield. The lantern loomed closer now, vibrant and alive, its light radiating hope that flooded inside him like a warm wave. One last surge of energy propelled him forward. He lunged for the lantern, fingers reaching out. A sudden roar erupted behind him, fierce and seething. The shadows convulsed, thrashing wildly, as the threatening figure of the stranger emerged from within their depths. It lunged, arms extended, and Jonathan's breath caught in his throat with sheer terror. Your time is up, Jonathan. The stranger howled, his face morphing from shadow to something sinisterly human. The words clawed at Jonathan's mind, unraveling his resolve, but there was no turning back. Gripping the warmth of the lantern, Jonathan pulled it close, feeling an electric surge through him. Max. He prayed, voicing the bond that carried them through the gloom. With a flick of his wrist, he swung the lantern toward the shadows, a desperate plea to free himself and his son. The light burst forth, breaking like a wave upon the shores of darkness. With a deafening crash, the shadows shrieked in agony, the bright light searing through them, but the figure of the stranger stood firm, a twisted grin stretching across his face. Fool! He took a step forward, the shadows swirling into a terrifying vortex around him. You can't escape this. But Jonathan could feel the power of the light coursing through him, battling back as he shouted against the encroaching dread, we'll see about that. As the two forces collided, the world shook around him, reality splintering like glass. And in that critical moment, Jonathan felt a whisper of victory tinged with despair. Would the light break the darkness for good? Would it save Max, or would it draw them deeper into the nightmare? The ground cracked beneath Jonathan's feet, threatening to swallow him whole, and darkness closed in. The ground trembled, reverberating like the throaty growl of an angry beast. Jonathan felt himself teetering, caught between the light he clutched so tightly and the darkness that lunged for him like a ravenous wolf. There was no time to lose. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to cling to the flickering light that was now his only hope. Bracing himself, he planted his feet firmly and unleashed the lantern's glow, directing it at the advancing shadows. A blinding wave of light surged forth, tearing through the darkness with relentless fury. The whispers turned to wails, a cacophony of despair echoing from the shadows as they recoiled, momentarily stunned and disoriented. Jonathan seized the moment. Max. His voice tore through the chaos, breaking like glass, piercing the air. Where are you? Panic smeared across his soul like tar. The laughter that echoed through the carnival was replaced by a chilling silence, and a gripping dread tightened around his heart. Had the darkness taken his son? He refused to accept it. He couldn't. Focusing, Jonathan squared his shoulders and aimed the lantern at the swirling vortex, determined to fight back the malevolence that threatened to consume him. With each beat of his heart, the light pulsed brighter, striking against the shadows with a vibrancy that pushed back against despair. But the figure of the stranger, twisted and taunting, loomed closer. Foolish man, the stranger hissed, his grin grotesque and sharp, do you really think light can save you? You'll never find him. Jonathan felt a surge of anger flash through him. You don't know me. He roared, grounding himself in the strength of a father's love. The lantern's light pulsed in response, sending out brilliant tendrils, each one cutting through the shadows like clean metal. There. A flicker caught his eye, a silhouette darting amidst the columns of darkness. Max. I see you. Jonathan shouted, desperation and hope mingling in his chest. But before he could move, the stranger lunged. Shadows billowed around him, grasping and clawing like hungry hands. Jonathan stumbled back as the vile figure closed in, its face twisting in a grotesque mirage of mockery and rage. This is your end. Like a bullet, the fear shot through Jonathan's veins. But he couldn't falter now, not when Max was mere feet away. He tightened his grip on the lantern, mustering every ounce of courage. You're wrong. I won't lose him. With a primal roar, he surged forward, charging through the mass of shadows. They lashed out, striking at him with icy tendrils that grazed against his skin, leaving stinging marks of despair. But Jonathan pushed onward, the lantern illuminating every path as if it were pulsing with the heartbeat of the universe. Max. He reached out, stretching toward the dim shape coming closer. Hold on. Suddenly a flash burst forth, a beam from the lantern shot outward, blasting through the dark. For a moment, Jonathan caught a glimpse of his son, wide-eyed and terrified, yet fighting with the spirit that fueled the very essence of life. Yet, just as quickly, the darkness attempted to swallow that hope alive, trying to snuff it out like a candle caught in a storm. Jonathan's heart raced as shadows surged once more, desperate and angry, swirling to reclaim what they believed was theirs. In that second, clarity struck him. He couldn't just fight, he needed to guide the light. It was time to confront not only the enemy but the truth hidden deep in the shadows of his own fears. Gathering every ounce of strength, Jonathan pointed the lantern toward the heavens, flooding the carnival with radiant light. You will not take my son. As the shadows screamed in agony, a familiar voice pierced through the chaos. Dad. And then it happened. A moment froze in time, a flicker of recognition ignited within that darkness. But alongside it surged the stranger's fury, the figure leaping forward, ready to strike. Would Jonathan's light prevail, or would the shadows drag them both into oblivion? The answer hung in the air, heavy and electric, as the shadows prepared to retaliate. From the depths of darkness, Jonathan's heart raced with raw determination as he clutched the lantern tight against his chest. Its light flickered with life, casting brilliant rays that sliced through the thick shadows. I won't let you take my son. He yelled, his voice strong enough to momentarily silence the whispering darkness around him. Suddenly, the stranger lunged forward, a dark storm of malice and power, but Jonathan didn't waver. I choose light. He shouted, raising the lantern high above his head. In that instant, the room erupted in a blinding flash as the light exploded outward. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in agony as if the very essence of darkness screamed against the brilliance. Max. Jonathan felt the connection surge between them, an invisible thread of love stretching across the void, pulling at him and urging him forward. In that illuminating moment, he could see his son, caught in a swirl of toys and shadows, eyes wide with fear yet glowing with the remnants of innocence. Just a step away, Jonathan felt his own heart spill over with love and desperation, igniting every fiber of his being to reach for his child. As he bolted forward, the light illuminated the path. Jonathan sprinted through the swirling shadows, broken toys and unnatural shapes falling away as the lantern's glow embraced him like a shield. Hang on, Max. I'm coming. He cried, his voice infused with fierce resolve. Max's frightened eyes widened even more, his laughter caught somewhere between joy and terror, each giggle a plea for his father to break through the shadows that sought to engulf him. Daddy! The boy squealed as Jonathan grabbed for him just inches away. Time stretched as he surged forward, the air thick with tension. Not so fast. The stranger's voice rose like a thunderclap, snaking through the noise as he twisted the shadows, trying to reclaim what he had almost lost. Jonathan felt the shadows tugging at him, thick and suffocating, each tendril a reminder of how close they were to obliterating everything he loved. Light! Jonathan bellowed, feeling the lantern pulse with energy. Channeling his love for Max, he thrust it forward, casting brilliance in every direction. It was as if the light knew its purpose, driving the shadows back, creating a safe bubble that surrounded them. Finally, in a last desperate push, Jonathan leaped, catching Max's tiny hand as the light flared brighter than ever. Together, they were bound by a force stronger than the pull of darkness. I've got you. Jonathan gasped, dragging his son toward the warmth of safety, but the stranger refused to relent. You think this is over? You'll never escape. He spat, his form twisting and distorting in the retreating shadows. The darkness whirled like a tempest, swirling with anger, claws reaching for them, desperate to reclaim its prize. Stay with me, buddy, Jonathan said, feeling Max's small fingers tighten around his. Their grip was a lifeline amidst the chaos, defiant against the despair threatening to engulf them. "Daddy!" Max shouted, his voice fierce, filled with newfound strength. "We can do this." Jonathan felt warmth flood his heart, a flicker of hope ignited between them, a bond so fierce it pushed against the very darkness that sought to tear them apart. "Together!" he shouted, igniting the lantern with every ounce of love, each heartbeat a drum propelling them toward victory. With one final surge, they broke free from the oppressive grasp of shadows, the light enveloped them, flaring a brilliant white that sent a shockwave through the dark. The stranger's scream echoed, fading into nothingness as the shadows disintegrated like a dream upon waking. Jonathan stumbled back, the light surrounding them pulsed, brighter than the most beautiful dawn. The oppressive gloom lifted, and warmth returned where there had only been darkness and despair. "Daddy!" Max giggled, a sound sweet and pure, resonating against the backdrop of the now vanquished shadows. The boy's laughter rang out like music, filling the empty space with life and joy. Jonathan's heart swelled, relief flooding his entire being. Everything that had once threatened to destroy them had fallen away, crumbling into forgotten memories. The lantern flickered, its glow softening, revealing the remnants of the carnival fading into the backdrop. Jonathan dropped to his knees, gathering Max into his arms. He breathed in the familiar scent of his son, the essence of joy and love mixed with relief. "It's over, buddy. We're safe," he whispered, cradling Max tightly against his chest. The night was still, the weight of darkness a ghostly echo behind them. But as Jonathan embraced his son, he knew they had conquered more than just shadows. They had reclaimed the bond of father and child, strengthening it in the fire of fear, wrapping their hearts in the light of hope. No force could tear them apart again. The grandfather clock struck midnight, the final chime echoing softly. In that heartbeat, Jonathan kissed the top of Max's head, the warmth of dawn washing over them, and whispered, "You are my light, kiddo." As dawn broke, illuminating the remnants of chaos with soft golden rays, Jonathan felt a fresh start, a promise of hope wrapped in their reunion. Together, they stood, hand in hand, ready to face whatever lay ahead. This was their moment to embrace a new beginning, a vibrant path illuminated by the love that had saved them, and as they walked away from the shadows, Jonathan could finally breathe, knowing that some lights never fade. You need to subscribe now to never miss a story like this again. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm and support your favorite channel. Flood the comments with your thoughts and reactions about this amazing conclusion. Let us connect. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this triumphant end.